Save the Semantics, episode 286. It is December 23rd, 2024. My name is Myro. This is the podcast where I ramble on for a bit about some shit. Recording this on a Monday afternoon. Taking the day off today, and then the next couple of days for Christmas Eve and Christmas. So nice little break. It's been a nice sort of extended weekend so far, which has been good. I've been sleeping in a lot more than I usually am, which is saying quite a lot because I am not someone who is an early riser at all. I tend to get up pretty late in the morning, so nothing too crazy necessarily, but yeah, it's been good. I've been able to kind of just relax and catch up on some stuff, just chill out in general. So it's been good. Surprisingly, well, actually, not even really that surprising considering what I talked about last week. But I've been a little, I've been a little checked out from basketball. It sort of is. I'm really just I'm really just giving more credence to the argument that this is kind of the low point, or the very slow period of the season. I think one of the things for me, and despite the Warriors winning last game, I didn't really watch that game in particular. I feel, and I know this is whatever, I just have been, so they lost quite significantly to Memphis a couple of games back. They lost by like 50 something points, and that's, and they had just gotten Schroeder and everything. They did win against Minnesota in the game after, but just the season has been such kind of this roller coaster that I have been, I don't know, I think it might just be a combination of just the crazy up and down that this season has been, along with the fact that maybe I'm just like a little, I just sort of like taking a step back from basketball. I will be watching, the Christmas Day games, of course, as is tradition, but outside of that, I've been just kind of, I haven't been the most engaged, really. And it happens. This happens every season with basketball. I think it just happened a little bit more quickly than I sort of anticipated. Just sort of taking a step back. It's a very long season, right? I go through periods where I'm just like not at all engaged with the sport at all, and I can kind of pop back. It's so long that I can just kind of pop back in and be like, oh yeah, I guess I missed out on some things. I guess I missed out on some developments, but I didn't really miss too much leading into some of the more significant games later on in the season, right? But yeah, it's been it's been a roller coaster of a season for the Warriors, and in general, I mean, there has been some interesting developments in terms of teams that are maybe maybe showing up to be a bit more of a potential playoff contender. You can look at definitely look at teams like Memphis and Houston as some of those kind of early risers, but outside of that, I feel there hasn't been really too much that has been surprising. There haven't really been too many breakout performances that I would consider to be shocking by any means. And it's been a weird kind of slow season. There's just been so much talk about the low ratings of the season, and I'm like, okay, sure. Like, hearing that is like honestly a little bit It's annoying to kind of hear that conversation over and over again. I'm like, dude, I'm just gonna watch the game. Like, just right now, it happens to be that I'm not super interested. Like, I am much more tuned in at the beginning of the season, but I'm just so tired of this conversation about why the ratings are, why people aren't really watching the games as much as, in previous season. I can really point out some real obvious like offenders or real obvious issues. You can look at the fact that games are just not at all accessible. I happen to have League Pass, but League Pass is not really the most affordable, program. And it's just like, and there are other venues by which you can watch the games. There are alternative methods, which I've mentioned before. So it's like, if those things are available, it's like, why wouldn't you take advantage of that instead of paying whatever cost you are paying for either a league pass, your whatever local network you're connected to, whatever TV cable program that you're still maybe paying for, which is honestly kind of ridiculous at this point. The fact that cable is so, like, really the only reason why you still have cable is for sports, and even then it's not guaranteed that you'll be able to watch any of the games, right? And I even look at the case of something like the NFL. I was curious one like Sunday, I was just kind of like, I don't know, maybe I'll watch some football, and for that, it's like there's so many different like subscriptions that you need. Like, I know there's like, the equivalent of a league pass for the NFL and that kind of thing. But it's like, outside of that, like, games are shown on so many different channels. It's like Fox, CBS, ABC, ESPN, like it's shown on so many different channels. I'm like, how do you even manage this? Cause I remember like during the NFL playoffs last year, I was, again, I'm not the biggest football fan, but I was just kind of curious. It seemed like there were a lot of, there's a lot of hype going into the playoffs last year. And I was like, dude, I don't know how you're supposed to watch this specific game aside from subscribing directly to like a Peacock or something. I'm like, I'm not going to freaking do that. Like for one game, that's kind of ridiculous. You know what I mean? So it's just sports across the board, I think, in general, have become even far less accessible than they have been during the cable era of television, and that's really frustrating. It's incredibly frustrating. So it's like, no wonder fans of sports are gonna try to use other means to watch the game. Like, it's not gonna be like, of course they're gonna take advantage of that. Why would you pay upfront all this, this cost of watching the games, especially if you're just a fan of a single team, especially. And then plus you got all the blackout rules, which I talked about in the past. I don't really want to harp on that too much because I'll be kind of repeating the same thing I've said before, but it's just ridiculous. You know what I mean? Like, if you're already paying for a subscription, like, why do you need to pay even more to see your own very team? Like, it is just ridiculous. I know that the network has like the rights to broadcast the program, so therefore you aren't able to watch it's just all this nonsense that like really, who cares? Who really cares? Like, I want to watch my team. I'm already paying for a product. I should be able to watch basically all the teams, and I can't even watch my own. So it's like, what the hell am I even doing this for? So there's so many things wrong on that front of just even broadcasting and getting it be accessible for people to watch. So that's like the big thing. Like, I know people are like, oh, why is our teams like, is it unwatchable because teams are like jacking up threes? It's like, no, I don't think that's the main issue. Like what do you think that, like, how different is it watching? Like, of course, the game has changed significantly, absolutely. But I mean, is it really that much more? Is it really that much less exciting than it was during the 90s when people were shooting jump shots and that kind of thing? Of course, Michael Jordan is kind of the exception of that, but I don't think like how much more, like, I don't know. Is it really that significant of a drop off in terms of the quality of the game? I mean, I think the quality of play has absolutely increased. I mean, you can just look at the way in which teams defend. It's so different from how it was even in the 2000s, you know what I mean? Play action calls, like, motion offense and all that stuff like that. That's just not something that you would have seen in, the 2000s, by any means, as like a significant form of the way in which the game was played. So it's like, is that not, I don't know, maybe for, I'm not trying to, I'm not trying to like demean fans, but it's like for a casual audience, maybe that's something that they don't necessarily think is that interesting. I love watching defense. Like, defense is like super like awesome to watch, but maybe on the offensive side of the ball, maybe it's just not as interesting watching, players, jack up shots from 30, from the logo, like a la, Steph Curry. But I don't know. I really don't think that's the main issue. I think it's just the fact that it's just inaccessible for most fans, really. And it's frustrating. So it's like they're like putting the blame, like, they're putting the blame like kind of on like the product of the game, when in reality it's probably, a combination of a number of things, but really the main culprit is being the fact that people just can't watch the games. I mean, if we want to talk about the product, you can, I don't want to talk about the refs, but you could talk about refereeing, stoppage of play, like the last, and I think I've become a bit more attuned to it recently, is just like the last like minute of NBA games, especially if it's like a close game, it definitely lacks tension in a lot of ways, because there is so much stoppage of play. You got the refs reviewing the plays, like there's just so many egregious examples of the game just completely coming to a standstill, and you just like, you get discouraged. You're like, just move on. Like, we want to watch them play. Like, we don't want to watch them like, we don't want to watch them go to the bench and the refs go to the monitor and that kind of thing. Like, there's just too many instances where the game just completely stops, and that's incredibly frustrating to watch. And it's like, you want to be in tune with, like, this should be the most exciting point of the game, where there could be a buzzer beating win, buzzer beating shot at the end of the, as time expires. But it's just like not, I don't know. I think in more cases than not, you see it where it just is completely just like shut down, and it's so it's frustrating, you know what I mean? Yeah, you don't want to see that as fans. It's just not exciting at all. And I think part of it too is just the rules of the game sort of, lend itself to, players fouling. You try to foul the worst free throw shooter on the opposing team so that they miss, and that you get a chance to either tie the game or take the lead or whatever it might be. And that in itself is not very exciting, right? But that's just part of the rules of the game. Like, you're just you're just playing by the rules. So it's like what, I don't know, what are players and coaches supposed to do in that case? So it might just, that could just be like a fundamental issue with the end of the game itself, right? At least within NBA rules. I don't know exactly. I know there are some differences in college and like FIBA rules and that kind of thing, in terms of the way, free throws and that kind of thing are treated. I do remember when they were, in the Olympics, I think there was like a rule. It's like, if you make the first free throw, you get to shoot another one. But if you miss one, that's it, right? And I think that could really be something. I don't know if that's something that would be worthwhile implementing, because that is a pretty big rule change for the NBA. But I don't know. There's, I don't know. I think there can be maybe a little slight tuning here and there that could make the game like speed up a little bit more, and make it flow a lot better than it maybe currently does. So I don't know. There's a lot of things to kind of pinpoint, but it's just like, on top of me feeling maybe a little just sort of worn down, and just maybe taking a little breather, take a little break from watching games. I also, just hearing this conversation not even really about the game itself, but just like the lack of like, it's like lack of interest or whatever. It's like, no, I don't think people are not interested. It's just people can't watch the games. And it's just annoying to hear that conversation over and over again. And it's like, okay, so then let's do something about it then, if you really feel that this is an issue. So yeah, basketball has not really been, I've been, checking, score watching here and there. But outside of that, haven't been super tuned in. But I will be watching the Christmas games. Maybe I'll be watching some games later today as well. I know the Warriors are going to be playing the Pacers today, so maybe I'll tune into that. Maybe I'll see how that goes. I beat Dragon Quest 3 HD 2D recently, over this past weekend. I reached sort of I beat the final boss, reached the end of it. There are some like, post game things that I could do. There's like a post game dungeon. I don't think I'm gonna be, working through that, but if there is anything that would sort of bring me back to the game, that is something right there. So overall, really, it was just nice going back into the world of Dragon Quest. Like, this is like, a very traditional, this is like, kind of the magnum opus for like the SNES Dragon Quests, rather NES Dragon Quests, excuse me. Yeah, I really had a good time with it. It had been a while since I've kind of played like a super traditional JRPG. It's been a very long time. Like just like the most, by the numbers, I would say, but not even in a sort of like an insulting way. Like this is kind of like it's sort of the grandfather of, the games of, all the other games that came after it. And it was nice being able to kind of step into that. Obviously the quality of life stuff was nice, having sort of like a quick save or an auto save, during moments where you were about to fight a boss and that kind of thing. Definitely made the experience a lot more, tolerable and a lot more doable. I think I would really struggle, I think, to pick up an older NES or even SNES game the way it was and play through that, with just like the the lack of ability to save and that kind of thing in dungeon or out of dungeon. You have to go to like the church to save and that kind of thing. I would struggle to do that nowadays. It would be a little hard for me to kind of go back to that era of games, but I think stepping into this Dragon Quest remake, I feel that I got a nice kind of flavor of that era, and just kind of experiencing it. The last boss itself was actually pretty hard. I was able to beat it in one, the first time, but it was tough. Like there were definitely points where I thought I was gonna my team was gonna get wiped out, but I think I had it was challenging, but it felt the right amount of challenge. And it was good. It was a good way to end it. I felt like sometimes with final bosses, it's one of those things. It's like a lot of the time I kind of go into it probably a little over leveled, and it's just kind of like a sort of a snooze fest. But this was like the right amount of challenge, and it felt good. It felt right. It felt satisfying to kind of go through. There's sort of like a little gauntlet at the end leading up to the final boss. And it was satisfying to kind of see it through. It felt like I was really, like I was like, okay, if I don't do this, I have to kind of restart. Like obviously you do have the ability to pretty much easily go back to the final boss, but it was good. There was like tension there. And it was a fun fight. It was cool. And overall, I just had a really good time with it. I'm actually surprised that I was able to beat it before the end of the year, because I was like, maybe I'll put it off and come back to it later when I'm feeling a little more up to it. because I did need to grind a decent amount to get my characters to a certain level. I switched up some of the characters' classes to fit what I think was like the most optimal. And it was I actually kind of saw it through, and it was good. It was a really good time. I've already sort of talked about this in terms of what the next thing I'm gonna play is. I'm not, I sort of hinted last week that it might be Okami. I am maybe kind of leaning towards that, but I'm still not 100% on that yet. I have games that I own, that I have yet to delve into. So actually, I thought now is like a pretty good opportunity to kind of look at the games that I'm anticipating on playing going into next year. I thought that might be kind of a fun exercise following, looking back on the games that I did play a couple weeks ago. And it's because I do have I have a running list of games that I do want to play. This will be updated as it goes along, but yeah, I thought it might be fun to kind of revisit it and think about which ones I will most likely be picking up next year. And also, I think it also is going to come into effect whether, like when the Switch 2 is announced, are there going to be games at launch that I think are going to be worth buying? Again, I'm not going to be buying the Switch 2 at launch, but is it going to be, maybe there could be something that's on there that sways me to get it. So I think it's fun. It's going to be fun to, look back on this list. I did it last year as well. So yeah, I kind of want to revisit what I have on here at the moment. All right, so currently what I have on my list of games that I want to play that I have yet to play, I have Astral Chain, Amori, Limbo, Final Fantasy 12, Final Fantasy 8, Tunic, Suikoden 1 and 2, Rogue Legacy 2, Inscription, Chained Echoes, Nier Replicant, Sea of Stars, The Witcher 3, Metroid Dread, Metroid Prime Remastered, Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice, Baldur's Gate 3. I know, we'll see if that's something I could get on another console, or if it comes to like a Switch 2 release. We'll see. Live Alive, Valkyria Chronicles, Kirby and the Forgotten Land, Star Ocean Second Story, Octopath Traveler 2, Yakuza Like a Dragon, or Yakuza Kiwami, which was released on Switch in October, Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown, East 9, East 10, Animal Well, Dark Souls. I just put Dark Souls because it's like, do I want to maybe give it a shot again? We'll see. Emio, I did start playing Emio, but I haven't purchased it fully. El Shaddai, Metatron, Nine Souls, Link's Awakening. I did write Hyperlight Drifter, but I did buy it, and Alan Wake. So, a lot of games. But yeah, let's look through games that I think would be a nice sort of step in terms of like, I guess Okami too. I did check it off because I bought it, but yeah, that's going to be on the list as well. But what's going to be kind of my next long playthrough, right? There are some games on here that I think could sort of fit into maybe sort of like a shorter session. I'm looking at like Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice and like Animal Well and that kind of thing. Those could be like nice, some of those games that are maybe like 10, 20 hours at most, instead of like the 40 plus hour JRPGs. But yeah, I'm thinking, so what I'm thinking, I really want to delve into one of the other Final Fantasy games. I'm feeling 12. I've heard really good things about 12. I heard the combat is like somewhat similar to the first Xenoblade Chronicles, which is kind of in line with what I like. I heard the Gambit system, the gameplay is really fun, and I heard the story is pretty interesting as well. So I know that upon release, it came with sort of mixed reviews because of the gameplay being pretty, really kind of shifting away. I think it was like the first time. I don't really count Final Fantasy 11 because it was the online game, but 12 as sort of like a mainline game was kind of the first time that it really shifted away from turn-based combat. And so I think that really deterred a lot of longtime fans from maybe engaging with the game and maybe being upset with this shift. Like this was kind of the turning point in a lot of ways, right? For the Final Fantasy series in terms of moving away from the traditional turn-based or like ATB combat. But I think upon revisiting, upon sort of, going back to it and looking at it with, without kind of eyes clouded by nostalgia for the older games, I think this game actually stands up pretty well. And I think it's looked upon a lot more fairly nowadays. And I've just heard good things about it. You know what I mean? I really don't know a ton about this game outside of maybe some of the characters' names, and again, from what I've heard of like the gambit system and whatnot. But it just has me really interested. I think. It sort of, it actually kind of makes sense considering that I played Final Fantasy X this year. Is like kind of like the next, step is kind of like the next, the I guess the whatever the next mainline game is. So chronologically, I think it kind of makes sense to maybe pick up this one. I have thought about going back to Final Fantasy VIII and, going into the PS1 era of Final Fantasy. That's like the one outside of 7 and 9 that I have yet to play. But I'll see. I'll see how I feel about that one. Because I've heard it is very interesting, but I also am like, I know kind of my level of patience when it comes to the older games in general, right? I'm sure that it has kind of the same quality of life updates that Final Fantasy 7 and 9 do. With 7, which I played a couple of years ago, it had kind of like the speed up mechanic for gameplay and for movement and that kind of thing, and that really helped with me getting through the story, and I ended up really loving it. But yeah, I'll see how I'm feeling. But I think, I probably can't go wrong with either one, but I am kind of leaning towards 12 at this time. I don't know if it's something that I'm going to play anytime soon, but it does feel like something that I will be picking up going into next year. And I actually, I can't believe I forgot this. I actually didn't include Xenoblade X on my list as well, so I will be absolutely adding that. That's like a day one purchase for me. Probably going to be pre-ordering it, so that will be on the list. It's coming out in March, right? I believe. Yeah, that would be an absolute easy purchase for me. So yeah, those Final Fantasy games, again, most likely 12 is something that I'll be getting into next year, maybe soon, maybe not, we'll see. Other than that, I talked about Okami. Maybe I'll start playing, who knows, maybe I'll start playing that before the end of the year. And there's quite a lot of games that are already out that I'm interested in and that I would like to pick up. I think it's worth revisiting. I'll probably be talking more about that later this week, and just kind of catch up on that. Maybe I'll be actually already starting one of these games even before the end of the year. So that's something to look forward to. And I still have Hyper Light Drifter on my list of games that I still need to beat. So a lot of good stuff. I will hold off on talking any more about that until later this week, and again, maybe I have more to say on a particular game. And yeah, I'll be talking some basketball as well. I'll probably talk some Christmas game action. And yeah, I mean, we're going into the new year, which is crazy. I'll probably record something before then, but yeah, I will save any other discussion until later this week. All right, recording this on December 27th. It is a Friday afternoon / evening. It's been a nice little week, nice little holiday week, if you want to call it that. Just kind of had these last couple of days to catch up on work and all that. But yeah, mostly it's sort of a continuation of the Christmas break holidays. I have kind of another week coming up of more time off and leading into the new year, which I'm looking forward to. But yeah, it's gonna be it's gonna be a nice little time. I'm trying to. I've been having some trouble. I mean, I say this almost every time, but I've had some. I think because now is sort of like a lull time. I'm a little less disciplined with my sleep and everything, and so I sort of have tended to stay up a little later than maybe I should. And yeah, it hasn't been the best. Trying to be a little bit more disciplined about that. Again, it's so funny because I feel I say this every year, and I also say this almost every week, every day of trying to get better sleep or whatever. Am I ever gonna reach a point where I'm satisfied? I don't know. Who knows? Maybe not. But it's yeah. I'm trying to get that back on track because it's yeah, it hasn't been very good recently. I did sleep okay last night, but I'm still not like 100%. I'm not confident about my quality that I got out of it. This past week we've we had the Christmas Day games, which I tune in for some of them. I do wish that I watched the Knicks and the Spurs game because apparently that was really good, but busy kind of in the morning taking care of some Christmas things. And I mean, that game started at 9:00. I know it's like noon over on the East Coast in New York, but damn, dude, early, man, early start time for that. But some of the other games were interesting as well. Watched part of the Timberwolves and Mavericks game. It was Luka I think he got re-aggravated something in the first half, so he wasn't able to play in the second half. So game was not exactly the most exciting, but it was fun to see Ant do some Ant things. And afterwards, I think it was the Celtics and the Sixers game, that was pretty entertaining to kind of the end of the game. There were some shenanigans that were happening. The Sixers, like Tyrese Maxey, kept just turning the ball over for some reason. Like he just could not get it past half court. I mean, the Celtics were playing some good defense on him, but he was just also pretty careless. So was Embiid. Like they were just, I don't know. They were just like almost throwing the game. They eventually won, but it was just like, dude, what are they doing? It was just so, I don't know. It was kind of funny to watch, but yeah, Sixers ended up winning that one. And then we got to the Warriors game, which ended up going down to the line. Steph, he almost pulled it off. He almost pulled off this kind of miracle win. And it would have gone down as an all-timer. Unfortunately, they could not close out on the defensive end, and Austin Reeves ended up making a buzzer-beating, like not a buzzer-beating, but a game-winning layup, which was a little anticlimactic, but it was still a good game, just a little disappointing. We sort of have a small sample size here of Dennis Schroeder's fit with the team. I don't think it's quite been super well integrated yet. I think they're still trying to find the right role for him. I really feel that he functions best as, the backup point guard instead of maybe being a combo guard alongside Steph, although you did see him take on kind of the defensive assignment on, players that are at the top of the key, kind of, point of attack. But I still don't think that they've like fully figured out the best way to use him. Because it is nice seeing him be in charge of sort of the bench unit, being kind of the distributor, the also as being a strong offensive threat on the bench side of things as well. I think that would I feel like that would probably be the best role for him. It's just that like that guard rotation. It's unfortunately kind of with Pajemski. I feel that I may have been sort of, I don't know if ragging on him is the right term, but I feel that I've sort of addressed him being a bit of an issue and in kind of the position of this team. He does some good things, like he does, his rebounding is really, is impressive and everything like that. And his energy is good to see, but, there's you can only make that case so many times before you start to kind of poke all these other holes in kind of his ability as a player. And this isn't to again he just is flawed, and he's just not and it comes down to unfortunately his size, his shooting ability. Like he can make a three once in a while, but he's just not reliable at that point. And he's not someone who's the strongest defender. He's average at best. And I don't know. I feel there's a better option there. There's got to be a wing replacement there. I don't think the 3-guard lineup scenario that they had in the Lakers game was really, I don't know, it just didn't feel the best. I mean, the game did eventually come down to the point of a one possession game, and there's only so much you can really take away from that. But leading up to that point, they were down by double digits before Steph miraculously crawled and clawed our way back into the game, into a position of winning the game. But we were kind of down in that position to begin with. You had Hachimura hitting a bunch of threes. It just, he had like a really good game, sure, but also there was just nobody on the perimeter that was really pressing up against him. I don't think Pajemski's presence was really going to do much to affect that. I just don't. I don't know. I feel there just needs to be an additional move that has to be made, and it could be the case where maybe more time just needs to be given for Schroeder to really fit into this role. But there's still so many other just kind of issues that stick out where I think a change will really need to be necessary in order for this team to be considered a potential playoff team or contender. You know what I mean? It's really frustrating. And I know I keep harping on this and I keep going back to this point because it really is just kind of it's just kind of, we're doing the same thing we did last year. Where, they started off really hot. It was just like, oh, Warriors are back, strength in numbers, all that stuff where, we could go 12 deep. It was kind of the same conversation. I think it felt more, you felt better about, I think I felt better about it this year after the first 10, 15 games or so, because I felt like there were players who could really impact this team in a way that could be conducive to winning. Unfortunately, you just, again, the Buddy Hield thing hasn't really, it was not sustainable. His shooting is not sustainable. Unfortunately, you have, they traded him away in the in the Schroeder trade with Anthony Melton. Like he really could have been that kind of secondary, wing defender. Unfortunately, he just, injury history and all that stuff, right? And for some reason they're just not really playing Kyle Anderson. I don't know if Steve Kerr just doesn't have a lot of confidence in him. I don't know why. Like he's a proven player. I feel like he could be a good, a good player and a good presence on the secondary unit, but maybe he's just lost confidence in him for some reason. I'm not exactly sure. But it just the level of play that they had, it was just to such a degree that now it's just hard to replicate that, and it's hard to sustain that type of energy on both sides of the floor for 82 games. So I think I think there just needs to be another another move that has to be made to bring someone that can actually be a secondary scorer alongside Steph. Like, Schroeder is good, but he's just not like I do. You saw kind of what I did see some of his performances that he did have in Brooklyn. You know what I mean? It just helps that Brooklyn is just not, they don't have they're a rebuilding team, right? You had like Cam Thomas was out, so like someone had to kind of be a proven scorer on the team, so like he had to step into that role alongside like Cam Johnson, which I would feel would be a really good fit. I don't know if it's something where we like doing another trade with the same team is kind of funny, but listen, man, if it's available and if we do have the assets for it, I think we should try to go for it. I think like there just needs to be a secondary scorer, secondary creator alongside Steph that can really provide some sort of offensive punch and also have a decent defensive prowess as well, which I think Cam Johnson kind of fits on both sides. He's looked really good. He's definitely getting his trade value up, absolutely. I know that he's probably wanted in a lot of just across the board on other competing teams, so I'm sure that other teams are looking to trade for him as well. But I hope that the Warriors can maybe take the initiative and try to get him on board somehow. I've speculated about this like a few weeks ago, or a couple weeks ago, in terms of players who I think could also be a fit alongside the Warriors. There's Zach LaVine. I just don't know, like, contracts and the numbers. I don't look at the details, and I know the details are kind of important for a trade, right? There's reasons why they include all these other assets like cash considerations and second round draft picks and all that stuff, right? In order to make the numbers work, and it's a trade, like you have to balance everything out, right? So I don't exactly know what the contract would be, because I know LaVine has a pretty sizable contract. So I don't know how that's gonna shape up, but I think the Cam Johnson thing probably makes a lot more sense. Plus, he just would be, I think, a better fit on this team. But yeah, it's just there just needs to be one more move. I think this is not gonna be unless like Schroeder turns out to be like an awesome secondary star, which I don't really expect that to be the case. I think he will be a good complementary player, but I don't, he's going to be a really good supporting, bench player, whatever. But he's not going to be the one shooting the lights out. He'll be a good, ball handler and all that stuff. So, and a solid, on-ball defender and all that. But we just need one more. We just need one more piece, I think. And I think, and maybe some, I don't know, just shifting of the rotation. Maybe once we do get a Cam Johnson player, or Cam Johnson himself, maybe that would kind of help round out the roster. But we'll see how that goes. I'm cautiously optimistic. I was actually not even really that mad. I was disappointed by the Warriors game, but I wasn't like pissed. I was just kind of like, it felt very, it felt sort of in line with the last couple of seasons. I think last year was a bit more. It was more, even more frustrating last year because of how many losses how many losses happened because of the double digit losses or double digit leads we ended up giving away. And we've had games like that, very similar, earlier, during this season as well. So, but the Lakers loss, I was just kind of like, we were gonna, if Steph didn't go just nuclear in the last minute of the game, I just, it's gonna be another, just another loss. So it's like, it would have either been a miracle win or just, just not a great, just another loss. So I wasn't insanely disappointed. I didn't feel as hurt about it then versus some other games, or frustrated as some other games. So I'm just, I'm just sort of abiding my time. I think my expectations have sort of fallen back in line with how it was preseason. I'm not really, even if we do get, say, a Cam Johnson, there is still the likelihood that we underperform and that we are in play-in contention as opposed to playoff contention. The West is tough. The West is tough, man. Even teams that are struggling, like the Timberwolves or the Suns, I would consider them to be on kind of a similar level where we are right now. They have, they have good they have good players. I have there's I could see, the Wolves are struggling right now, but they won against the Mavericks. They can win against, any team really. They just have a weird mix up because of the cat trade and all that. But I could still see them being a really tough team to go up against. You know what I mean? We did beat them twice, which I'm happy about. But in terms of just playoff seeding and all that, you never know. And there's still teams that are kind of in the mix of things. You could talk about the Spurs. I don't quite know if they're going to be, making that lead quite yet this year. But, you saw what Wembanyama has done. I saw the highlights that he had against the Knicks. He's a real deal. He's the real deal. And they're going to be a really good team. I think pretty soon, if they play their cards right. And so it's just not, it's the context, the conversation remains the same, is that it is going to be tough regardless of who we're able to acquire. It's going to be tough, regardless if we are able to turn things around with the roster that we do have. And I don't expect that this team will be a championship caliber team, with those kinds of changes. I really just want, I'm trying not to be too greedy. I think it is fair to want to have a lot, but I'm not trying to be complacent as a fan, but I'm fine with them being in competition for the playoffs. It's just the market is just not out there. Players are just not players are just not available like that too. I'm being realistic. There are really only a few that are wow, this could be a really good piece to have on the team. I would love to have a center. You know what I mean? I would love to have a center, but those players are just not available. Yeah, we just have to kind of work with what we have. So if Cam Johnson is the right fit, if he could really, kind of help, right the ship and be kind of a steady hand alongside Steph, I would be more than happy to have him, if it even just pushes our odds a little bit. And if it increases our chances of being in the playoffs as opposed to being in the play-ins. Some other crazy stuff happened, today. And this is not something that I personally am, I'm not, obviously I'm not a Kings fan. However, this popped up on my radar, Kings coach Mike Brown got fired. He got let go, which is pretty crazy to me. I mean, I like Mike Brown. I thought I liked, I liked his presence on when he was with the Warriors and everything. I thought he was a pretty personable guy, and he's had like a pretty cool personality and that kind of thing. Pretty crazy, man. I mean, I don't. This feels. I feel for Kings fans like that. Just that's so frustrating. Like I know the team has been underperforming by quite a lot, right? I mean, I think the hopes were for them after acquiring DeRozan was that they were going to be back in, playoff contention and everything like that. But that just was not the case. They just have not looked good for, like, I've, once in a while I've tuned into them. I mean, last night I wasn't really watching any games, but I was just, keeping, just sort of passively keeping track of the scores. They were playing against the Pistons, and it was like the last game on, so it was like, all right, well, I mean, I don't know. I have like a really small vested interest in the Pistons, like being, a decent team this year. I just like to see teams and franchises, struggling franchises kind of bounce back and be somewhat good and deserving of their fans. And so I have like a very small vested interest in the Pistons having like a kind of like a successful season. I would like to see that. It's nice to see kind of like a underdog story, if you want to call it that. They were down like a decent amount. And I was like, all right, Kings are probably going to pull this off. I kind of wanted I was rooting for the Pistons to win this game. Generally speaking, if it's like a East versus West situation, I'm usually rooting for the Eastern team, unless it's obviously the Warriors, right? But in most cases, I'm rooting for the Eastern Conference team versus the Western Conference team, because positioning for the Warriors and everything like that. But yeah, so I was just sort of like, yeah, hopefully maybe the Pistons maybe they can make it interesting, and they did. They definitely made it interesting. I think they were down by like 19 or something, and they were down like 10 with 2 minutes remaining, and then they got it down to like a 3-point game. And I didn't watch this. I was just kind of seeing like the score, like, kind of slowly change and shift. Like Pistons were like really kind of getting close, and I tuned in for like a slight. I was like, all right, I'll watch like a very short portion of the end of the game. I watched like Kevin Huerter hit like a couple threes or a couple free throws. It was like a 3-point game. I was like, all right, I mean, best chance is like Pistons tie the game and maybe they go into overtime. I'm like, all right, I don't really want to watch the rest of that. And so I kind of turned it off. and then the next time I checked, which is a little while after, I'd sort of put the game, I wasn't really even thinking about the game, but I was just curious, and I saw that the Pistons had won by 1 point. I'm like, how? There's no way. And I went and watched the highlight of Fox fouling Jaden Ivey. I'm like, dude, I cannot believe. Dude, if I was a Kings fan and I saw that shit, I would be furious. If that happened to the Warriors, where they lose on a 4-point play, I would be furious. Like, dude, I would not. Like, I was mad about the freaking the in-season tournament game against Houston, where there was that, like, the whole, jump ball situation when it was like a foul act, like, actually that drove me over the edge. But when it's like a self-inflicted wound like that, where it's a 4-point play, I'm like, dude, and your best player is, that's just devastating, man. I'm like, dude, and it was crazy. I mean, I'm sure, like, just both sides, like, Pistons fans were feeling like probably just feeling a certain way, and the Kings fans were obviously devastated. But I guess that was enough to push the Kings over the edge to fire Mike Brown, which is like, I don't know. I mean, Mike, listen, man, you should come back. Like, you should come back to the Warriors and join back on the staff. Like, I think they would love to have them back. But damn, that's like, he led them to their first playoff, like, series, their first playoff berth in like 20 years. And coach of the year. Like, I know this season hasn't been good. Last season they sort of, they couldn't squeak by into the playoffs. But, like, I mean, dude, like, what are you talking about? Like, that shit is crazy. It's just such like man, dude. I don't know. Like, the whole firing of the coaches thing is such like it feels like an epidemic of sorts. You know what I mean? Like, I understand in a lot of scenarios, like, maybe it is warranted, but in this case, it just feels like a bit of an emotional reaction. I think they've just haven't, just the pieces have not looked good. Like, I really like DeRozan. I've always liked him since his Toronto days. He's a fun player to watch. He just was not the player that was going to be enough for them to be pushed, to be considered like a contending team. They have a lot of similar issues that the Warriors do, really. Like, they lack kind of size. They lack wing size. They lack kind of, their bench play is pretty subpar. Like, ours is also not the best either. Like, so they have a lot of the same issues that we're dealing with. They just happen to not have like a Steph Curry on their team, right? And so it's like, is it really? It's not. I don't think it's Mike Brown's fault at all. I really don't. I don't think it's his fault with what the front office did. It's like, what, Monty McNair is their general manager. Like, I don't know. Like, it just feels so premature. It feels very just reactionary. It's very, I don't know. Like, I don't. That's like that would be, man. That just sounds like an awful situation. I feel for the fans. Like, that just sucks. That sucks to see. I would hate to be kind of in that. I don't know. I don't know if that just feels like such like a poor franchise decision. It's what like a poor franchise does, is just some nonsense. It's like a little bit, just a little bit of adversity. It's like, no, we can't do that. We gotta like change everything. I don't know. It's shit, man. It's a shit move. But yeah, it was kind of just wild to see that. Just obviously the Mike Brown connection with the Warriors and everything. So that kind of was like, I was listening to some like podcasts and like radio talk heads talk about it during work, and I was like, dude, it's like, it's tough, man. It's tough hearing this from kind of fans and that kind of thing from their side of things. But yeah, I don't know. It's a rough spot to be in. But yeah, he can come back. He can go back to the Warriors. I don't know how that works really. Is it? Can you join a coaching staff right after being fired? Probably not. But I mean, especially like during mid-season, I don't think that's really a thing that you can do. But yeah, it's wild stuff. So yeah, NBA has seemingly gotten interesting once again. Some interesting developments. Warriors hopeful. I'm hopeful that they can figure things out and at least have some kind of trajectory going forward. At least for this year. Like this is it, man. This is it. I mean, like Steph talked about it himself. Like he's talked about his own regression and his age and everything. And I'm like, that's what we expected. That's just kind of the reality of things. And it's close. It's near closing time. We're getting really close to it. And so I think this is the last year that we can really do anything. And so we'll see. We'll see what they do. We'll see what Mike Dunleavy does. I like the Schroeder move. Like, I think he can be a really good quality player on this team, and yeah, I expect that there will be another move that will be made to before the trade deadline, which is coming up in February, I believe. So that's it on the basketball side of things. I decided, so I know earlier this week I talked about possibly starting up Okami. I do want to play that. I do. I just like I've just been kind of craving something. You know what I mean? I really enjoyed my time with Dragon Quest 3, and I was like, that was a very nice game. That was really fun, but I'm feeling this want and kind of this desire to go back into, a bit more of a meaty JRPG. And I decided to pick up Final Fantasy 12. I've been, I talked about it earlier this week. I was just like, yeah, this might be a game that I might play, and I want to play it. I just have been wanting to kind of play a JRPG, and I want to play Final Fantasy, and so I decided to pick it up. I haven't gone into it yet. I haven't. I bought it like a couple days back. I bought it on Christmas, but I haven't had a chance to play through it yet, to get it started yet. Maybe I will this weekend. I am a little busy with, catching up with friends and that kind of thing. But when I do have some time, I will delve into the game, which I am excited about. I've heard, I'm kind of reiterating myself, but I heard the combat is somewhat similar to the first Xenoblade, and in terms of just sort of the, being able to move your character around and make selections with the combat. But I'm intrigued. I've heard good things about it. Everything that I've heard has been, pretty positive for the most part. And, I feel that I can't really go wrong with this one. I was leaning maybe Final Fantasy VIII. I might be repeating myself, but I do want to maybe just play a bit more of a modern, like, I know it's still an older game, right? Obviously, but, I am leaning just kind of maybe towards something that's kind of maybe in the 2000s era, as opposed to the 90s or the early 2000s of the PS1 era. Yeah, Final Fantasy VIII is still on my list, obviously. I will probably be playing that, later down the line. But I just, I think I just want to play something with a bit more of modern mechanics and quality of life stuff. I'm very excited to get into that. I'll probably play a little bit of it this weekend when I have the time, and I'll talk about that. Give my first impressions of it early next week, and to get into all of that. So I'm excited. I'm really looking forward to it. All right, so I just stopped recording for a little bit. I had to take care of some stuff, but I wanted to come back and talk about a few more things that were sort of top of mind. So, and this is no news, you know what I mean? Like, at this point, like, this is regarding like Switch 2 leaks and that kind of thing. Over the past, during like Christmas, that kind of thing, there have been so-called leaks that have kind of come out. There's like a doc reveal or something like that. And it is really funny the way in which the leaker kind of went about it. Like, he's just like sort of like teasing it. Like, these leakers are such like prima donnas about this shit. Like, this is like their like shining moment. It's so funny to me, man. Like, people are so, it's like, they're not like, I mean, like, what, as someone who is a leaker, like, what do you get out of it? Do you get paid for your information? Like, do you get paid? I've talked about this before. Like, I've questioned this in the past when there have been either leaks or rumors or speculations, and it's like, who's feeding these publications or the people that are, telling these news? about this information? Like who's telling this? I'm just like, and if whoever is providing it, like, do they get like paid at all for information? Like, do informants get paid nowadays? Like, is how does it work? I don't know, but like it feels very like juvenile in a lot of instances, just like the way in which they approach providing this information. Like, sure, maybe they have some level of security in case, like, Nintendo comes after them or whatever. I get that, but it's just funny they like treat this as like, some of them provide like little code words, and they're like, all right, for the next reveal, this and this is like a long time character from a bygone era. It's like, I will just say it. Like, whatever, man. Like, what are we playing games for? Like, I'll play the game. I don't need to deal with like the trying to decipher this information. You know what I mean? It's like they like treat this as their kind of like little stage in a lot of ways, which is funny. Like, it's like not that big of a deal. It's just funny to like look at it and see how like much they treat this as like a thing. But anyways, it was basically on Christmas. There's like one username, and it was like also on the gaming leaks and rumors subreddit slash the Nintendo Switch 2 subreddit. I think it's like one of the mods was also involved with that as well. Where they showed some images of what the dock is gonna look like. It looks different. It definitely looks different from the original Switch dock model. I mean, I don't, the dock is like not the thing that I really care about that much. I do remember there being issues in for some people where when you went to dock the handheld console into the dock, the screen gets scratched by like the sides of the dock when you insert it. I've never had that issue. I've been fortunate about that. That might have been a thing maybe for like earlier models, or like, the very first Switch, models that came out. I never personally ran into that, but I can see it being maybe an issue. I think there was also an issue when you do dock. I didn't like charge properly because like there was like I don't know, for some reason it didn't connect. Yeah, there's always like there's a lot of things. I mean, that my biggest like my biggest thing that I've run into with my Switch is the Joy-Cons. Like, I've had to get like multiple new Joy-Cons. I've fixed like the Joy-Con drift on some of mine, but it sometimes is kind of a temporary fix, and ultimately I've had to just buy a new one. I'm not someone who's really good with, fixing things and troubleshooting. I'm just not wired that way. But I try my best to fix those things. But just the fact that you have to kind of go through the effort of either, fixing it yourself or just straight up buying a new one it's so frustrating. Like, they feel cheap. The fact that they cost so much money for each individual Joy-Con is a joke. I that's really like one of my biggest criticisms that I sort of levy towards the original Switch. It is like one of my favorite consoles. I mean, I might consider it my favorite console just because of the volume of games that I've been able to play on it. But I do have some real criticisms of the console, just the cheapness of some of the things with the Joy-Cons, and just the devices. Like, it's so, I feel like those things can be so fixable. It feels almost in a way like kind of like a planned obsolescence type of thing. I don't know if that's necessarily what Nintendo was going for, but it kind of feels like a little cynical of a decision in terms of the way it was developed. Like it just feels like such a fixable issue. I don't know. So I really hope I really hope that that isn't an issue for the next console. Like the dock thing, I'm not super concerned about. Like, I'm assuming so the way it kind of looks, it looks a lot bulkier and kind of like rounder in the back instead of it being a much more of like a square rectangle kind of thing. Obviously, I don't know for sure if that's like a, if it's like a truly verified view of it. Like I don't know how much I can really trust it, but I could see it being, that way, especially for like the power that it holds, like the ability to just, be a more powerful machine and that kind of thing. But I don't know for sure for like the, the full like form factor and that kind of thing. But that's not really my biggest concern because for the most part I play handheld. Like that's just I just like to play handheld. I like to listen to the game, especially with like my earphones and that kind of thing, and my headphones. But just the listening to like the music and that kind of thing. I've been like primarily a handheld gamer for like the majority of my life with the DS and the 3DS and that kind of thing. So that's just kind of what I've become comfortable with. I don't mind TV, but I just, it feels more, I don't know, it feels more like personal in a way. That's just kind of what I've grown to enjoy. So I don't really, it's not even really that big of a thing of like the dock. I mean, if it's more powerful and able to, you know, be, better presentation and everything, cool. I mean, that's awesome. But it's not the highest level of concern for me. For me, it's really, it's like the Joy-Con and everything like that, and the cheapness of like the model. Like I'm just hoping, I hear about kind of these like magnetic Joy-Cons and how they connect. I'm hoping that isn't like, I mean, I hope that it's better integrated and better managed, and just like it just doesn't become an issue of where I have to like buy a new freaking Joy-Con every like couple of years or something like that. I hate that, man. Like it's like, I get it, like sometimes controllers just don't work, and controllers can, that's bound to happen. But I hope that it moves and develops and advances beyond kind of that plasticky feel of the current Joy-Cons, because I just yeah, I'm not a fan of that. I'm really not the biggest fan of that. So but yeah, there's, dock leak was kind of like the big one for this past week, which is interesting. I do think it's interesting, that information coming out. It feels like the reveal is kind of imminent. It feels like, people are speculating it's going to be in the first 2 weeks of January. I'm not going to hold my breath. But I do, I will be keeping an eye out on that. It feels like January is like the most likely time for a reveal. The original Switch, I think, the announcement was made like in the year prior, in like 2016, I think. And then like the sort of the full presentation was in January of 2017, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Or I think it was 2017. So yeah, it feels like that might be kind of in line with how the original kind of release schedule was set up. So yeah, I guess I mean, we have until the end of March for there to be, that's kind of the timeline that was given by Nintendo. So expectation, I think, makes sense for it to show up in January. I mean, I hope it does. Just let's move on with it. Let's just see what it looks like. I mean, people already kind of think they have an idea of what it looks like. I'm not 100% sure if that's really the case, but I mean, if there is a ton of smoke, and so I think the likelihood that what has been shown is like that, what the, what the final thing looks like, feels pretty likely. And I just hope that there's like some, interesting development or interesting things that they bring to the, the newest hardware. Cause like, if we already know what to expect, like obviously Switch successor, it sounds like it's going to be a Switch, it's just going to be called Switch 2. Fine. That's fine. But yeah, just like throw some interesting stuff in there. Make the UI, like the homepage and all this stuff more interesting, more fun to interact with. Like my 3DS is so much more entertaining just to hang out like on the homepage. There's like musical cues for each place. Like the Switch like ecosystem, if you want to call it that, feels so much more just like kind of dead, kind of just like it feels like kind of like white space. When you go like the home tab, I do like how like snappy everything is, but the fact that there's like no eShop music, there's no like, you can't like pick a home theme for your homepage, like that just, it's so annoying. You can't change the colors. Like the only colors that you have available are like black and white. That's it. You can't customize. Like, dude, let's like have a little fun with it. You know what I mean? Like I like engaging with the tools that are given to you. Like I remember messing around with those things on the 3DS and enjoying that. And also give like a freaking play log, please. That was like nice to be able to see that on my 3DS. Like I miss being able to, like, the only way to view how much time you've put into a game is if you've like played it recently and if you've played it like after 10 days. And it's such a weird, I don't understand why it's like that. I don't understand why I understand why like the UI is like that. But it's like, have like a separate, setting section where we can view how much time we've put into it. Like, it's so annoying that you have to like go through the effort. It's like, oh, I'm curious like what my most played games are. It's like, I don't know. I think you have to like, from what I've heard, you have to download like a parental control guide thing, and then you can view how much time you've put into a game. But it's like, I don't want to go through that effort. Just show it like somewhere easily where you can get it from the home tab. Like, it's so, I don't know. Like, I like being able to kind of see like the stats and stuff, right? I like, I like with like the Nintendo Wrapped year-end kind of review thing, that they tell you how many hours you put into a game. It's like, oh, that's cool. These are like my top 3 played games. But like, I want to see it for like all the games. I want to see it for all the games, my most played games, like all the way down to, all the games that I've played just in the history of me owning this system, right? Like, I think that would be really interesting to see. Just like, just these little things. The Wii was fun. I never had a Wii U, but I feel like from what I saw, my friend had a Wii U, and I remember kind of, there's like things that you can still do, like in the plaza. There's like fun little activities, like there are just, I don't know, there's more ways to engage with the system outside of just the games itself. You know what I mean? Obviously that's the most important part, which is, that's important to me, of course. And that's why the Switch for me is, one of my favorite systems, obviously because of the games I'm able to play. But there are things that are lacking just in terms of the things you're able to interact with. And just having those little things is fun. It makes it more, it's like, okay, maybe I want to take a break from the game and I can just kind of go back to the home menu and just kind of mess around with some things and, toggle my settings or whatever. Like, just throw in some things there. Throw some music on there, please. Like, make it a little bit more interesting. So there's, I don't know. I'm just kind of spitballing here, but I feel what I'm saying is in line with what other people also want too. So I don't think it's anything novel, but I hope that they're able to kind of take that into account, because those are things that I feel would make the system more intriguing, more unique. more just kind of like, okay, it's like more excitement too, you know. I know those are very minor, like those are things that most people probably don't necessarily care about, but I do. I like to, I like to have some more intriguing aspects of the hardware and the software that aren't just limited to simply the games themselves. And obviously, I want to hear about the games. Hopefully, the games that they do provide at launch are going to be exciting. I'm assuming that they will be, but I just like the little things too. Like that would be kind of like and that would probably actually incentivize me to buy the game earlier than I would have instead of waiting for it. I'm not, I'm telling myself right now because I don't anticipate buying the Switch 2 at launch, but I will probably get it sooner if there are some things with it that are, just like these little qualities that are included with it, that make it more exciting. Like if those things are with it, it's like, okay, that incentivizes me to buy the Switch 2 more. It's like maybe I'd rather interact with those interfaces than the original Switch, where it's just bare bones. There's just nothing going on, right? Like, okay, I can customize the theme, and it's like I can do like with the 3DS, like you have these themes. What I did, I know this is a little silly, but I was just when the 3DS eShop and the Wii U eShop were sort of both shutting down. I kind of went through and I tried to get like the themes for my favorite games so that it could like show up on like my home page and that kind of thing. And it was like fun. Like you could, I think I got like the Fire Emblem, obviously a Xenoblade one. Like there's just like, there's ones that you can get in Zelda. Like there's a lot of different like themes that you could have on the home page, and it just makes it more fun and more like it's things kind of pop up a little bit more. It's like you can kind of switch it up, and if you get sick of one theme, you can change it to another. Like I wish that would also be brought back in some way, shape, or form. Those things will make me more interested. I know it's like a small, it's a very small aspect of it, but if it makes me want to just delve into the system more, like I would happily purchase it at an earlier date than I would have if it wasn't included, so I don't know, or they're just going to keep things the way they are. I mean, people are going to buy it regardless, right? But I just hope that it would be really nice to see, like that would just be a nice kind of additional cherry on. I mean, I don't know, even I wouldn't consider it a cherry on top. I would consider it to be an improvement. I would consider it to be, bringing back something from a prior generation that I think would be needed. I think it would be nice to see that. So, and it's things what people want, that kind of thing. It's cool to do that. So I don't know. I just, small thing, but I think it can mean quite a lot in the long term. So, yeah, I'm just spitballing here. There hasn't been like a ton of other things that have really, popped up. I mean, there's been a lot of, just speculation and that kind of thing. And people saying that the Switch 2 is just going to be called the Switch 2. It's like, all right, for sure. So we just have to wait, man. It's coming up. We grow ever impatient. I think I'm just waiting for it to finally show. I just want to see it. I want to know what it looks like. I want to know what it's got. And then I'll sort of make my decision on whether, when I'm going to get it. I don't know when, if it's going to be much later this year or next year, we'll see. But I want to see what it looks like. And and leakers, stop trying to like make this into like this kind of game. Like just say what you know, or just don't say it at all. That's it. All right. All right. That's all I wanted to add for today and this week's episode. I will be I'll be just if more news comes out, regarding Switch 2 stuff, which I don't know. The weekend usually is pretty slow on the news, so most likely not. But I'll obviously talk about that. Talk about Final Fantasy 12. I've already said that. You know what? You know the drill. That's going to do it for this week's episode. Thanks for listening as always. This has been Save the Semantics. Signing off.